Alright, this is my Grand Design 230RL fifth wheel, and do a little overview of my Victron off-grid install. So if we move up, kind of focus on the pass-through. Here is my pass-through, and I've got this complete system in, and I'm not using any of my pass-through space. So we'll kind of take a look at what we did. We'll get some closer ups. I'll take all this down and you'll see a little bit better about what's going on, but just a little overview here. Behind this carpet wall is where my batteries are. Again, we'll take a look at that. Now originally this wall came to about probably right here, and then there was one more section of carpet wall right here. In this leftmost section was this outlet, the cable connections, and a light, but they're kind of spread out over this area. I'll try to roll in some original pics into this video. But just chop that piece down, used a little bit of it to reconfigure these devices, and then I also added in a 12-volt cigarette lighter type plug. I can plug in my 12-volt refrigerator type cooler there. This equipment, and I'll cover this more in detail in when I remove all the covers and whatnot of what's here, but just kind of note, I've got some drawer latch magnets right here. Got 4 of those across, and I've got a plexiglass cover. I'll put that on and then we'll take a look. But that is the overall view. My entire pass-through is still functional for storage. And then finally, with the plexiglass cover on, you can see you got the just the little plates here and a little latch magnet, so it comes on and off easy, but it leaves a clear window for me to look at all the lights and gizmos and gadgets and make sure everything is still functioning as it should without having to remove any covers. And then one thing I did kind of in this unique little cubby that all this stuff is stuffed into, and I'll show you some pictures, some more pictures of this kind of a convoluted wall that I built there. It's a 3/4, I believe, inch plywood. But if we can see, maybe not, back there, I can't see too well on the screen, but in the event, you can take my word for it. This thing steps back pretty deep right here where the, or deeper anyway, right here where the inverter is. And then you can see it kind of kicks up a little bit right there, comes over, and then I got another kick out right there just for some lateral support. But behind, right behind there is a drain from the bathroom sink, I believe is that one. So it just kind of bends around that, leaves room for the Multiplus to sit, and then way back behind the Multiplus, which we'll never see, is the heater. So gave some space between all this and the heater, so it's got plenty of room to breathe. But I'll put, I got some still shots of this as I was building it. See a little bit better what it looks like, but just a kind of a build as I go type of setup to get it to fit into the space that there was behind this wall, and then of course the rest of the space just used for the my 2 DIY batteries. So as messy as all this wiring is back here, I cleaned a ton of that up to kind of create this room from the batteries and this whole board here, but it is still a disaster in my mind. But I can't take anything else apart to clean up without having to disconnect all the water lines. Everything else is a tangle that won't come entangled because you can't get to one end of the electrical, and you can't take a water, or I don't want to take a water line loose. So it is much better than it was, but man, they have no care for any organization when they're building these things, because it's hidden behind this pass-through wall, and 99% of any RV owner never sees it. But it's a nice bit of room to fit all this stuff in without taking up your pass-through storage. Okay, just very hard to get perspective in this pass-through, but here are my batteries. This is one, this positive terminal and negative terminals hidden back there somewhere. And then over here is battery number 2. You can see the positive terminal. Negative terminal is hidden way back there somewhere, but they are connected in parallel. On the positive side, first thing it does is it goes through a Class T fuse. It's a 400 amp fuse. So this cable goes up and into my Lynx Distributor. So we'll look at that in just a minute. And then right back there is my shunt. So the negative cable, the main negative cable from the battery, comes into the shunt and then goes out to the Lynx Distributor. The positive cable is coming over from the battery I have labeled Reflection 2, and the negative cable comes off of the battery I have labeled Reflection 1. So just Reflection RV, so battery 1, battery 2. So positive and negative off of different batteries. There's the first two things that we see coming off the battery. And now let's look at the next section. All right, I left a lot out on the battery connection part of the video. I was kind of in a hurry and guess I wasn't thinking. So take just a minute to do another little overview here. And this is just a still shot of my batteries. I've got I'll have a link in the description for a build for these batteries. I made it very easy for you, even if you've never done it before. So check that out if you ever thought about building batteries. But talk a little bit about cables. I left completely out. These cables are 4/0 cables that I made. Got the cable and connections from Windy Nation. To make them, I had a hydraulic crimper. I'll try to put a link to that in the description also. A lot of stuff I'm making promises on links for. So I may not get all that. If I miss something, just ask in the comments. But then before you cut this cable, you can see it is super high strand count. It is very flexible. But as big as this cable is, you'll never contort it into some shapes without thinking it through. So if you look at this cable, I've got this horizontal line as I was building these. That's where I'm going to strip it to. And then this vertical line, that is actually the line, and this lug I would flip over. We're looking at the bottom side, but this line was to tell me where that lug went on so it would line up with the connection it was going to. So again, something to think about. Mark your cables as you're building them, if you're building them. And then I crimped it with that crimper that just popped up a minute ago. It makes a really nice 6-sided crimp there. And then finally just some heat shrink on it. And then this is just a little shot of what I was using to cut. This cutter is pretty awesome. As big as this cable is, it cuts right through it. And then if you're gentle, you can also use it to cut the insulation here to strip the wire. So I use the tool for both. Again, I'll try to have a link in the description. But if we go back to our battery shot, a couple more things just wanted to point out. You can see this is the parallel connection, positive to positive. The negative is way back here, so you can't see it in the dark, maybe right there.
So both these cables are the same length. And then this positive cable coming from this battery, I think I mentioned that a minute ago, into my T-class fuse, it is the same length as this cable back here that goes into the Lynx Distributor, which is over here just out of this picture. And then just quickly, right here, there's two really tiny wires that are connected directly to a positive battery cable as opposed to being in the Lynx. One of these is the power for the shunt. All right, so if you ever disconnect power from your shunt, then it's going to have to reset itself. You're going to have to go through a whole charge cycle for it to get your state of charge accurate again. So if I need to shut off power, and we'll again look back this way again when we get there, if I ever need to shut off power to the batteries, I don't want my shunt powering down and then having to worry about it recalibrating itself. And then the other thing that's here, little tiny wire, is that's going to my Raspberry Pi power, which is what I'm using for a Cerbo. So both of these will stay powered all the time, even if I have to shut down, turn off the disconnect for the batteries to do something or work on something else. And both of these tiny little wires have their own individual inline fuse, so they're protected in that fashion.
Okay, here's my pass-through wall. It's disconnected on this end. There are the two batteries we should have just looked at. And then the next thing battery power comes into is this Lynx distributor. So it is, I have the cover off. Power comes from the battery into this disconnect. This is the negative that goes out to that shunt and then to the battery negatives. And then here are my inverter connections. First, this connection is the main power for the original, all the original 12 volt of the RV. So that comes into that distributor to catch the power. It goes, if we can see, up here. So it's running across the top of the pass-through, goes down, and then along the front wall of the pass-through, and then goes into my front storage bays under the hitch. So we'll look at where that connects to, but this powers the original, all the original 12 volt system of the RV. Up just above this Lynx distributor, two boxes. The blue and black one is the Victron MK3, and then the black box is a Raspberry Pi. So the Raspberry Pi serves as my Cerbo. Instead of being 350 bucks, it was 35 bucks back when you can still buy a Raspberry Pi, but you might not be able to find them at much of any price these days. But that the MK3, the blue and black box, connects that Raspberry Pi to this Victron Multiplus Inverter. We'll look at just a second. And then to power the MK3 and the Raspberry Pi, you look down here in the corner, that is a 12 volt to 5 volt step down, so that powers the Raspberry Pi. And then that power is connected up here on this up here on this Lynx bus bar. Now this Lynx is designed for mega fuses. There's one there for the inverter, I think got a 300 amp one, and then there's one here, a 60 amp one, that's the powers the original 12 volt for the entire RV. The Lynx distributor, the smallest fuse I've seen made for these is 40 amp, and I could not find them anywhere. And 40 amp is really too big for something like this little converter. So one thing that you can do, I don't think a lot of people think about, is you can see this is just got positive power, and so it's on this bus bar instead of down here where it would be stepping through a fuse like this here. So that allows power, and then I just have an inline fuse. It's kind of hidden back up in there somewhere. So that's one way or another way to get power off of this Lynx distributor. So I've got a couple more slots. I want to add some other things in the future there. But then if we come over and look at our Multiplus, our inverter setup, you can see here are my 12 volt feeds that are coming off of that Lynx distributor, which is coming off of the batteries to power the inverter. And then down here are my 120 volt leads. So one is coming in from the plug that is way over there on the other side of that wall. So when I plug into shore power, it comes into the inverter, and then it comes out of the inverter and disappears way back in there to the underneath my stairs to where my power distribution box is, all your fuses and breakers and things.
Okay, one more thing I don't have a lot of good video of is the shore power connection. I had some pictures. So here is the shore power plug that's normally on the outside wall of your RV. Here I've taken it off. It had a just a piece of Romex there. It was labeled as 10 gauge, but if I was a betting man, I would say it didn't measure out 10 gauge. It looked awful tiny. But in any event, I just took that wire completely out. It wasn't long enough to do what I needed anyway. This cord here is actually a 30 amp RV plug, like you would connect on the other side of this of your connection, that and then goes to your power pole at the campground or what have you. I got this from my neighbor. He had this cord, like a 25-foot standard RV power cord that was had a burnt plug, and he was going to chunk it. So I said, give it to me. So I just cut the plug off, and where did that come from? I just cut the plug off and wired it into the plug that's mounted in the side of the RV. So all connected up and back together. Whoops, all connected up and back together. And so again, this will just be bolted to the wall of my RV, and you plug in right there. So now I have this length of cord that goes from that wall and across over to where the inverter is. And so that's how I connected my shore power to my inverter. And then coming from the inverter to my panel, this is the panel that's in the inside the RV. There's my stairs. So it's right beside the stairs when you're looking under the RV or under that past that wall in the pass-through. This is my factory original converter that charged the 12 volt lead acid batteries. These two wires here are the 12 volt feeds that go into the battery. I disconnect those. These wires, there's a green, white, and black. Those are the 120 volt wires. I disconnected that, and I just left this converter sitting back in here. Should I ever need it or want to sell the RV and take all my good Victron stuff out of it, I can reconnect that converter. But then what I did with the other piece of that cord that I got from the neighbor is I fed it through under the bathrooms and out into this into my panel. And you can see this looks like just like the cord that you drag out to plug in at the campground with just the end cut off. So I fed it through my distribution box and then just wired it into the distribution box. So you can see here, most of these are relatively the same size, and you see this one white one here. This neutral is twice the size of all that. So that is my shore power feed, cut open and attach the white to the neutral. There's you can see the big wire here, green ground, green to this ground bus bar where you see all the bare copper, and then the black 120 volt feed. It's really hard to see, but it's back into here and goes into the breaker. So that's how I connected the Multiplus to the my original electrical panel feed in the RV. So what do we do this side? Do this side. What side? Okay, I'm backwards. So way over on, I'll do the arrow. So way over here is my shore power feed, and it runs way back into here out of the picture into that Multiplus, and then it runs back from the Multiplus to right here. So that's how all those connections were made in just a little simple overview.
And then this blue cable you see here, the Cat 5 or 6, I just got it out of my junk drawer, so it probably doesn't really even matter. That blue goes in, disappears back there, connects up to that MK3, which then connects to the Raspberry Pi, and then that's where I get all my data out of the system. And then one connection I don't think I mentioned, but on the bottom of the Raspberry Pi, there's 3 USBs coming out of there. One goes to the Multiplus here, or goes to the MK3 to feed that. One goes to my shunt that we looked at behind the wall over there by the batteries, and one goes to my MPPT, which is in the front bay. We'll take a look at for the solar. So there is kind of a quick overview of the system going on, and hiding behind the wall in the pass-through, so I'm not using any of my storage.
All right, all the other Victron solar setup we've been looking at is inside this pass-through door. It's all right back here. This is the heater I mentioned, so it's all kind of in between there, and goes across the RV almost to the other side. So I mentioned my solar connections are up front, and that wire ran along the pass-through, and it comes out over here someplace into this compartment. So that's where we're going to be next. And then only solar I have are a couple solar suitcases plug in to this outlet here. So that's what we're getting ready to look at next. So inside that pass-through, up here are the cables coming from that Lynx distributor that I said that ran all the way on the other side of this wall, inside the pass-through, come all the way across the RV. They're coming through right there. All right, these 2 bus bars are add-ons. Quite the nice beefy bus bar. Again, I'll try to have links for most all this in the description. If I forget or miss, ask in the description. But so that power, again, from the Lynx distributor running across the pass-through comes in, positive there, negative there. All right, this mess down here, this is the factory 12-volt mess that's in the front of the that fifth wheel type compartment. So underneath the bedroom, bathrooms, right here up front. All this, that's going to power the landing gear. It's going to power all the lights and fans inside the cabin. It's going to power the safety breakaway for the trailer brakes. So anything 12 volt runs through right here, because right down here, kind of out of the picture now, that's where the 12 volt battery used to sit and connect into all this. Now that 12 volt battery, this cable, it's not the same one as a 12 volt battery because it was a cheesy cable, so I replaced it. But this is connected the exact same way as that 12 volt battery cable. This end would have been connected to the battery down here. And then the same with this lead. This lead would have been the negative battery cable that disappears up into this box and connected to the 12 volt lead acid battery that was here. So basically, other than changing the actual cable, I just moved those cables from the battery down here and connected them to this bus bar. So now all the 12 volt feed coming from my new battery location is coming into these bus bars, and then it's connecting to all the other 12 volt feeds for the entire RV right here. So it keeps you from having to move all this or do something with all this. Like I said, this bus bar just becomes the replacement for the lead acid battery that used to sit here. And that's how all that's wired in together. Got my MPPT mounted up to the wall. It is the feed from that is connected to the bus bar, so that goes back to the Lynx distributor and back to my batteries. That's solar, and then the solar panels come out and connect to that Furrion plug, or it's no longer a Furrion plug. Furrion plug that used to be right there. I have now converted that over to Anderson connection. So I've got a video on that on the channel, so I'll try to link that down below. Also, so all kinds of info in this one video. Make sure you check all the description down below for all the goodies that will be available.